Hedera really is able to onboard large-scale financial market infrastructure, and the validation and governance approach is one that is thinking the long term. There are no shortcuts. It's a 100-year vision for Hedera that's really being put forth by the likes of Google and Nomura and Shinhan Bank and Aberdeen and a whole consortium of large financial Fortune 500 companies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. That was Greg Bell over in Frankfurt at the Sibos Swift conference, the chief business officer over at the Hedera Foundation, essentially sort of talking about why Hedera is unique and uniquely positioned to onboard large financial institutions. And Hedera is very unique. And I have consistently put forward my unwavering opinion, which is why I'm an investor in HBAR, that Hedera Hashgraph is going to play a major role in this technical revolution that is currently being undergone by all of the largest financial players in the world. Central bankers, governments, and of course the likes of Swift, which announced their own distributed ledger. And actually in doing so, they did put provisions in for interoperability between private and public ledgers. And I think Hedera plays a role in the system at large. And that's Greg Bell kind of prefacing what he was then asked, which we're going to look at, about Hedera's role in the kind of tokenization of everything. And Greg Bell actually talks about how Swift can interoperate with Hedera, or Hedera can interoperate with Swift. So we will play that in just a second. But talking about large financial institutions, we of course covered the news around Lloyds Banking Group, Aberdeen and Archax facilitating the first ever UK live settlement of the FX markets through tokenized gilts and money market funds. Actually, we had an update just the other day from Lloyds, from Archax and Aberdeen in regards to this. I want to play this for you because it ties in very nicely with what Greg Bell spoke about there in regards to large financial institutions embracing Hedera due to the properties that it has. Let's dive into this clip.
This collaboration between Lloyds, Aberdeen and Archax marks a major step forward in digital finance. The UK is a leading hub for derivatives with a market share of close to 50%. Collateralization protects not only market participants, but the economy as a whole.
In this groundbreaking initiative, tokenized interest in units of Aberdeen Investments money market fund and tokenized UK gilts were used as collateral for FX trades between Lloyds and Aberdeen.
To enable this trade to happen, Archax issued, transferred and then securely held these permissioned digital tokens on the Hedera Hashgraph public blockchain.
This is the first time digital assets have been used as collateral in the UK. It proves that they can be used in regulated financial markets under our existing legal framework.
By using tokenized money market funds as collateral, we can lower trading desk funding costs, improve capital efficiency, and significantly reduce settlement times.
Now that we've established this key digital milestone, we're looking to start scaling the use of tokenized assets as transferable collateral.
It's been a collaborative effort between Lloyds, Aberdeen and Archax, and we're excited to be making real progress, pushing boundaries and advancing the future of digital finance.
We have it, ladies and gentlemen. Some of the largest players here within the United Kingdom, which accounts for 50% of FX volume daily, is looking to use and utilize Hedera. Do we need any more evidence that Hedera Hashgraph is going to play a vital role in this system that we're moving towards? Other than that, perhaps? And that's just one piece of many things that Hedera has going on. Let's play this second bit that Greg Bell then went on to talking about in regards to kind of Hedera's role. And he mentioned Swift. We know that there is something going on between Swift and Hedera. I think that was mentioned at HederaCon nearly a year ago now. We'll bring that up again. And then I'll finish things off with a little bit of price action. You guys haven't had an update technically from me on Hedera in a while. Ultimately, the sort of path forward that we laid out, you know, we've been accumulating Hedera since 2023, is really being followed. And we think you've got this sort of big, beautiful run still ahead of you. And we think, obviously, we've got a lot of macro reasons to why we think crypto or that supports crypto doing well. Dive into this second clip of Greg Bell.
And looking ahead, what role do you see Hedera playing as tokenization moves actually from pilot projects to fully regulated large-scale financial markets?
Yeah, so I think Hedera really is in this position where we're here to partner. We're here to partner and create and form those bridges, not just between blockchains, but also the interoperability between other networks like Swift. And so there is a huge opportunity to grow the infrastructure as now regulation is coming in place, and certainly there's more momentum and engagement from institutions. So that is fantastic to see, and the infrastructure is already here. That's proven for scalability of large-scale applications, and that's really what sets Hedera apart from other networks.
So he talks about kind of operations even with Swift, and it's interesting because Swift are actively looking, to work with not just their own chain, that it's still a prototype, it's a long way off, in my opinion, becoming a reality, but public and private sort of networks. The ledger that they're proposing is a natural extension of Swift's progressive ecosystem innovation and live digital asset trials over the past 2 years to ensure interoperability between DLT and existing financial currency rails. Swift today also announced it will roll out client solutions to orchestrate between different systems, supporting both private and public networks, and ensure efficiencies and synchronized transactions for various use cases. I think they're talking about Hedera as one of those public networks that they're essentially going to be working with. And I want to recap everybody with what a director over at Swift actually had to say at HederaCon 2025. Let's dive into this.
Of interoperability is a little bit more tricky, right? Because what we're seeing with stablecoins is this explosion of new types of financial instruments, which is fantastic, but it also increases complexity enormously. Yeah. And so how do you simplify that? So you make sure that there's still a stable flow, right? And you make sure that everybody can access this, because right now that is definitely not the case, right? You certainly have different sectors that are using it heavily and some sectors that are not using it at all, but that should be using it. So I think in terms of, we've focused a lot on financial fragmentation and how to reduce that. And it's not just a story about one company doing it. It has to be a collaborative effort. One of the things that we're doing is working very heavily on digital public infrastructure. And this is interesting because this is the idea that you have institutions and you have governments which traditionally have not built payment rails, right? Payment rails are often built by the private sector and sort of backed up by the public sector. And now we see the public sector saying, oh, there's all these things going on. We actually have to be involved in this. And you see this movement of national payment systems, of different regulations about AI and DLT and stablecoins. We've done a lot of POCs, kind of live trials, to understand where the different pressure points are and where the frictions are and how they can be addressed.
Yeah. And 2025, you've got a lot of live trials coming up, because we were talking to your team last week, and some amazing stuff coming up.
Be interesting. So I think there's perhaps an insight into Swift's ledger. I think it's going to be a ledger that sort of is a ledger of ledgers, like what Swift already is. And Swift's sort of own ledger isn't going to be able to do everything. And they've already spoke about a kind of public-private network alliance that they're looking to enable. And I think Hedera is very well positioned for that, certainly on the front of tokenization, which it's already been used to do by some of the largest institutions in the second largest market in the world. And this is really just one thing that we're talking about. Hedera's got a lot going on. There's this kind of perfect synergy between AI and blockchain, and Hedera is very much at the front of that. In fact, you could kind of almost call it an AI project in some regards, but it does far more than that, and it's going to do a lot of things at scale, certainly as the sort of roadmap continues to get rolled out. Let's talk about Hedera from a price point of view. Now, you guys know that I look at the markets in 4 phases. We're going to put this on log. You have just only entered phase 2, and that was on this break. So you went from a cumulative phase, what we look at as phase 1, to phase 2. We've been saying this all along. We said it's very common, and we've shown you lots of examples, that you get a retest before continuation. This is your retest. You've got continuation and broad phase 2 ahead of you. I personally believe you're going to see Hedera in the multiple dollars in the not too distant future. I think there's this broader financial rapture taking place where people that have assets get saved and those that don't get left to endure. And crypto, I think personally, is going to be one of the fastest or one of the furthest away out of a burning building, if that makes sense. And I think Hedera Hashgraph, given its sort of partnerships, given what it's doing, is very uniquely positioned to benefit from everything that's coming on the smaller timeframes. Really, this is just a pretty textbook falling wedge, in my opinion, that Hedera has going on. And you are ultimately getting very close to sort of breaking out of it. In fact, I think you will break this, and I think that's going to align with our more broad technical view, our sort of weekly macro view on where we think Hedera is going, which is continuing in phase 2. You know, this Elliotism's kind of maybe look at this as their sort of first little leg as it was. And there's a whole sort of bull market ahead of us, and we think the macro markets very much support that. So everything is okay. I think Hedera is set for multiple dollars. We wanted to also talk a little bit fundamentally about some of the amazing things Hedera is doing and look at what Greg Bell had to say over at Sibos. There's a lot more stuff that we've got to cover, so we'll keep you up to date in the week ahead. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. See you in the next one.